Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to part 11 of my Logic Pro 10 101 series. In this video, we're going to mix the vocals in our song. Remember, if you'd like to work along with me and practice your mixing and mastering, the multi-track Logic session for this song is available via the link in the video description below. So the song really has three types of vocals. We have lead vocals here, we have the lead vocals in the verses, plus some tags in the choruses, plus the lead vocals in the choruses. Then we have all of our male backing vocals, and we have all of our female backing vocals. So what we're going to do is I'm going to individually process the lead vocals, but the backing vocals we're going to be processing as a group. We're kind of like a choir. So we won't be putting individual EQ and compression on the backing vocals, but we will for the lead vocals. So let's start with the lead vocals. Let's start with just these four here. These are just the leads, the artificially created harmonies in the verses, and then the lead vocal in the choruses that have been panned left and right. So let's start with just the lead vocal in the verse here. Let me zoom in a bit, and we'll just put this on a loop. There we go. So I'm going to start with EQ. So I'm just going to use the channel EQ. I'm going to start with a high-pass filter. Put this around 85 hertz or so. What I'm going to do is, just to give it a little more body, I'm also going to add a bit of a 200 hertz bump, just to give it a little bit more low-end body. Let me just play with the bandwidth here a bit. There we go. And for the sibilants meaning sort of the S sounds, the air, the upper frequencies in the vocals, I'm going to use this upper shelf here around 75 100 hertz, and we're going to boost this up quite a bit. We'll control this range a little bit later on, but for now we're just going to boost that up for sibilants. And then one thing I like to do with the vocals is I always like to add a little 2K bump. Now I don't want this wideband bump. I want just a narrow little bump, and this just helps bring some of the center focus through with the vocals. So let's just hear what this sounds like with and without. So here's without.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past. These wasted days with you, been putting myself last.
So it's not a drastic difference, but it definitely has a little bit more air to it. Let's address the dynamics issues, and let's flatten out the dynamics and really make the vocals cut through in the mix. We're going to do this with a compressor. So we're going to add the compressor. And for vocal compression, I always like to use the vintage opto circuit because this models optical compression. It's the closest thing to, say, like an LA2A that you're going to have in Logic without buying third-party plugins. We're going to go pretty heavy on the lead vocals because I really want these vocals to have a lot of edge to them. So I'm going to go with a little higher than like a negative 30 threshold. Pretty heavy compression ratio around, say, 7:1. The makeup gain, we'll just keep it 0 for now. We're going to go with a softer knee since it's vocals. So not all the way soft, but say about 3/4 to the right. For the attack, I want a really quick attack. But normally for vocals, I would go with a longer attack to let some of the front end of the words come through. But for this, I really want to give this some edge. And actually, some of the backing vocals later, we're going to pull the attack all the way down. So let's pull the attack to like 12 milliseconds is probably fine. The release, we can put around, let's say around 75-ish. Turn the auto release on like we've been doing with all of them. For vocals, I'm going to keep the distortion off. And just so we can hear a little bit of the original dynamics blended with our compressed vocal, I'll set the mix to about 75%. So let's see what this sounds like now with and without the compression. So I'll start with the compression off, and then I'll kick it in, and you can hear the before and the after.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past. These wasted days with you, been putting myself last. But all that's gone.
And it's at a pretty low volume right now too, so maybe we'll play with the makeup gain just to give it a little bit more volume. And again, that's not the point of compression. The point of compression is not to add gain, but adding gain is something you may have to do after compression to make it stand out in the mix. So let me just unsolo this, and let's mute the other vocals, and let's hear what this sounds like in context.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past. wasted days with you, been putting myself last.
Cool. Now you'll see that our master output's clipping a little bit. We'll take care of that in the next video. We're gonna have to go through and pull down a lot of our faders to make sure that we're not clipping. So we'll deal with that later. For now, it's not that big of a deal. Cool. So we've got our vocals sound pretty decent. What I'm gonna do with the other lead vocals is I'm actually gonna copy and paste over the EQ and compression settings from the first lead vocal to all the other ones. So let's just hold Option and duplicate this over. The compression will be the same on all 4 of them. We're not going to mess with that at all. But on the artificial harmonies track, let me just solo that out.
Turn our seek, an answer to the past.
Because the vocals were artificially created based off of the lead vocal, they've got a lot of kind of glitchiness to them. And one way I like to hide the glitchiness is I like to basically take whatever EQ setting I have in the lead, pull out all the mid bands, and add a low pass filter to it just to kind of hide some of the high end, the high frequency glitchiness. And so basically what I'm doing here is I'm just band passing the signal and just not allowing the extreme lows, not allowing the extreme highs to come into the mix, so that when you hear the harmony and the lead together, it's not shocking to hear it. You know, you kind of hear the harmony, but you don't really notice it. That's really the goal here. If someone has to say, "Oh, that's a great harmony. I really like that artificial harmony that you created." Well, that probably means that you're not hiding it in the mix well enough.
With every turn I seek, an answer to the past.
I'm actually going to turn down the makeup gain and the backing harmony a bit.
With every turn I seek, an answer to the past.
So it's not super noticeable, and it's also panned slightly over to the right, just so the two don't collide with each other. Let's listen to the chorus lead vocals.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy.
And so we've got these hard panned left and right, but even so, when you have 2 doubled vocals like that, they're going to be a lot louder than the verse vocals are going to be by themselves. They're also kind of in the high range, and some of those whiny frequencies we're going to take out and control with a multiband compressor later on. So we won't worry about that for now. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, like we've been doing with all the other instruments, we are going to put all of the lead vocals in their own summing stack so that we can bus process them as a group. So I'm going to go up to Track, Create Track Stack, choose a summing stack like we did before. And now we have a summing stack I'll just call Lead Vocals, Lead Vox. And on this lead vocal track, we can apply some bus processing. I'm also going to add our effects to this as well. So, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a plugin called the Multipressor. It's under Dynamics, Multipressor. And what the Multipressor is it's a multi-band compressor. So essentially it's 4 different compressor units split up into 4 different frequency bands. So for this instance of it, we're just going to go with the stock attack and release settings, and we're going to be tweaking the compressor threshold and compressor ratio, as well as the makeup gain up here. So it contains all of the central elements of compression that we talked about multiple videos ago. We've got threshold, ratio, attack time, release time, but there's also some other things in here as well. Like there's actually an expander in it that we're not going to use for vocals, but can be helpful for other things. You can also adjust where you want the frequency crossovers to be, but I'm just going to use what we have and keep it simple. Okay, so for the upper 3 bands, I'm going to go with a much heavier threshold. By default, it's only using like a -15 and -12 threshold. So I'm going to type in 32 for each of these. And you'll notice that down here, this top little slider here is a way you can sort of graphically control that. But I already know the settings I want to type in. So I'm going to go with -32. For the bass, I want to compress it even harder. So I'm going to use -40 for my threshold there. But the difference is that although I am setting a really low compression threshold, really heavy compression threshold, my ratio is not necessarily going to be super heavy. If I set all these to say 10 to 1, all of a sudden I'm going to have really heavy pumping compression. That's not really what I want to do here. I want to control the tone of all of the vocals to sort of mold it into a tone or a sound that I like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a 2 to 1 ratio for the mid band and the high band, or the mid-low band and the high band. But for the mid-high band, I'm going to use a very heavy ratio. I'm going to use 15 to 1. Now, the reason why I'm doing this for this range is this is what I like to call the megaphone range, specifically around 1 to 5K. This is the area where your ears are most sensitive to. And if you don't control this range with compression, you can really make your vocals sound too edgy and too crispy. So that's what I like to do in this range. I like to really compress this range and just control it. For the low band, I'm going to keep the ratio of 2.5 to 1. So that's perfectly fine. Now, let's hear what this sounds like now, just with the lead vocals soloed.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past.
So you can see the individual reduction, the individual compression on each band up here. The problem is it sounds a little scooped, a little thin sounding, like the tone is there, but what we need to do is for each of these bands, we need to add makeup gain based on, really I'm just using my ears to figure out the tone I want, but the amount of makeup gain for each band. So as you compress down a band, you can take the whole compressed signal and move it back up. So you end up with a less dynamic signal, but a more controlled signal that still has the right volume that you're looking for. So you can either control the sliders right here, or you can adjust the amount of makeup gain from down here. So I'm going to go with like 2 dB for the low ends, not much of that. 6 dB for the mid-low end. I want some more body. Let's do like 5.5 for the mid-high range and like 4 for the high range.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past.
And here's the before.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past. These wasted days with you, been putting myself last.
It wasn't that the lead vocals sounded bad before, it was just that they didn't have as much control in some of these ranges as they do now. And there's a little more body to it with this little low-mid bump as well. Let's go to the chorus and see what the whiny vocals sound like.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy.
And then without.
Darling, baby.
See how on baby, the high notes just really, really sound whiny? This little 1 to 5K, it's really 1 to 7K here, but controlling this mid-high frequency really helps to take the whininess out of high vocals.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy. This is not your place to steal my heart.
Cool. So let's listen to this, the verse and the chorus with our multipressor kicked in. And you know what, before we listen to that, let's add some other effects to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a vocal reverb bus, a vocal reverb aux track that we can send over to for vocal reverb. Now, you could do this different ways. You could put the send on the individual tracks and control it that way, or you can just put it right on the summing stack. I'm going to do it the easy way this time. I'm going to do it right on the summing stack because really I want the same amount of reverb, delay, and spreader effect. These are the 3 effects I'm going to add to the summing stack. And I want this on all of the backing vocals, or all the lead vocals rather. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new send on my summing stack here. I'm going to go down to bus. I'll use, bus 8 since that's open. Pull this up a little bit. And remember that when you create a bus, it automatically creates an aux track with it. So I'm going to call this aux track Vox Verb. It's going to be our vocal reverb track. I'm going to add a reverb plugin, and that reverb plugin is Space Designer. The Space Designer preset I'm going to use is under Large Spaces Plate Reverbs. I'm really a fan of plate reverbs on vocals, and it's called Vocal Plate. So let's use that one. You can leave all the settings alone.
With every turn I seek.
Nice, so it adds a little bit of ambience to the vocals.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past.
And if you want more or less, you can adjust the send amount from here and you'll hear more or less. I just want a little bit on the lead vocals because I want them to sound out front, but when we get to the backing vocals, we're really going to stack on a lot of reverb. The next thing I want to do is add a bit of delay to the vocals. So let's actually go ahead and use the same delay bus that we used for the guitars. So we can reuse these effects, just a little bit of it. I don't want a whole lot.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past. These wasted days with you, been putting myself last.
Yeah, just a little bit of like a slapback delay. And then lastly, I'm gonna add the spreader that we, again, used for the guitars. And this is just gonna be like a chorus thickening effect. I'm gonna use quite a bit of that though.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past.
Here's without any of those effects.
With every turn I seek.
And with all of those effects.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past.
Cool. Let's listen to the verse and chorus now with all those effects and the multipressor and our track stack here.
With every turn I seek an answer to the past. These wasted days with you, been putting myself last. But all that's gone, and never again will I be torn. Between the wall and you and me, a bridge that must be burned. Darling, baby, drive me crazy. This is not your place to steal my heart. One more day, please give me everything. After this, you'll walk this road. You'll walk this road alone.
Cool. So that's like night and day compared to what we started with. We had these thin, kind of in the background vocals. Now we have these vocals that dynamically have been leveled off, are kind of edgy, and they cut through the mix a lot easier. Let's move on to our backing vocals. So like I said before, with the backing vocals, we have male backing vocals and female backing vocals. So all of these, let's unmute them. All the ones that say Josh are all me doing different types of backing vocals. I did them like falsetto, I did it regular voice, I did harmonies, I did artificial harmonies. So there's a lot of different layers going on in here. Let's just listen to those by themselves.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy.
And I've got them all, the levels all pretty low, and I've got them in pairs, panned left and right. And they sound kind of like a robot choir right now. And one of the reasons why I brought Christine in to do the female backing vocals was to blend my robotic vocals with her more natural vocals and end up with something that sounds like a real choir backing me up on the choruses.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy.
Because she actually sang all of the harmonies that I artificially created. So what I'm going to do, so we can individually control these two groups, is we're going to put these in summing stacks as well. So all of the ones that say Josh, I'm going to select those, go up to track, create track stack, summing stack. So I have a male Vox summing stack, and then we'll do the same thing. I should probably use the key command, Shift Command D, summing stack again. And now we have a female Vox backing vocal stack. So let's start with just the male vocals here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use EQ and compression, but again, I'm going to add it to the entire stack rather than to the individual vocals. So the first thing we'll add is the channel EQ. I'm going to high pass it like I normally do, but I'm going to go a little higher than I normally do because in the backing vocals, you really don't need a whole lot of low end. So I'm going to high pass around 120 hertz. I'm going to add that same little 2K bump that I did to the lead vocals, but I'm going to put it in a different place just so we don't have, the lead vocals and the backing vocals clashing with each other too much. So let's put it around 2700 for the male vocals. I'm still going to add that upper range sibilance, but not quite as much of it. So let me go down just a bit, say 4.5 dB. For compression, we're still going to use the vintage opto circuit. I'm going to pull the threshold down to about half. The ratio will do like 4:1, so not quite as much compression as the leads. We may play with the makeup gain a little bit later. A really soft knee. For all the backing vocals, I'm going to use basically 0 attack time, the shortest attack time I can get, so the compression immediately kicks in. One of the big problems with stacking multiple layers of backing vocals against a lead vocal is sometimes the consonants and the front end of words from the backing vocals can interfere with the front end of words and consonants in the lead vocals. So one way to do that is to set your compression attack time really, really low so that the compression immediately kicks in and the front end of words are not as noticeable. As you pull this up, the front end consonants of words are going to come in full volume and then be immediately compressed down. So we don't want that transient material in this. Release time, we use like a slower release time, kick in the auto release. For these, we're going to set the mix to 100%. I don't want to blend these at all. So let's just see what our male vocals sound like with and without the EQ and compression we just added. So here's without.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy.
And then with.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy.
Yeah, maybe a little more compression. Pull the threshold down, the ratio up.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy.
Let's see how that fits with the lead vocal.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy.
Cool. So again, it's not super noticeable, especially when we kick in the whole song. It's not going to be quite as noticeable. Let's duplicate our EQ and our compressor over to the female vocal. For this, for female vocals, we don't need as much of the low end in there, so I'm actually going to pull the high pass filter up quite a bit, around 190 hertz. Again, I got that to roughly 2K bump here. I just want to put it in a different place, just so it doesn't. So my female vocals don't conflict with the lead vocals, and also so they don't conflict with the male backing vocals. So let's just pull this down a little bit. I'll go like about 2250. I'm still going to use that same 7500 hertz sibilance bump, but since she's a female vocalist, she's already going to be brighter and more sibilant than a male vocalist. So I'm going to pull that down just a little bit. For the compression settings, I'm going to use pretty much the same setting as before. I may just tweak the compression threshold and ratio a bit.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy.
Yeah, a little bit lighter compression on there. I really want her vocals to cut through more than my backing vocals. I want it to actually sound like there is a female vocalist in the proverbial choir here. So let's hear what all of these sound like together.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy. Darling, baby, drive me crazy.
And the last thing we really need to do is add reverb and the spreader setting. I'm not going to add delay to the backing vocals. That's just too much delay. I just wanted a little bit of slap delay on the lead vocal. But I will add reverb. So that was bus 8. That was the reverb aux track we created earlier. For the backing vocals, we're going to add quite a bit more reverb than with the lead vocals. And then we're going to skip the delay again. So we're not going to use bus 5, but we are going to add the spreader. So let's add quite a bit of spreader in there too. So let's see what this sounds like now with the lead vocals and both backing vocal track stacks.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy. This is not your place to steal my heart.
Cool. Let's listen to the chorus, all of the chorus now, with all of our vocals in and with the mix in. Cool, let's listen to the second verse. We haven't heard any of that.
We've come so far, let it bleed, let it seal the fate you're living. Let it die when every day's
like we could use a little bit more reverb in the backing vocals. Again, just to make it sound more like a choir.
Darling, baby, drive me crazy. This is not your.
Cool, so that's it for part 11. In the next video, I'm gonna do some final mix tweaks. I'm gonna add a bit of automation here and there, and then we'll finally master the song and get a final product. If you guys want to, you can check me out on social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Patreon. I've got links to those in the video description below. Again, remember, if you'd like to work along with me, the full multi-track Logic session for this song is available via the link in the video description below. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for the support, and thanks for watching.